Hello, this is John from Coins, RPGs, and More. And this is the first episode that's going to get the More tag. Because this episode doesn't have to do specifically with coins or RPGs. It's a general topic, but also has more to do with the hobby of wargaming, which is another hobby that I have been enjoying for the past 10 years in various forms, one over another. I have played, I played a lot of Warhammer Fantasy over the years. Not as much, I shouldn't say a lot. There's people that have played a lot more than I have. I've played the occasional game and painted the occasional army and enjoyed myself. So that's the important part. Excuse me. I also play some Warhammer 40,000. Wherein I have enjoyed playing the Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarum as they're currently called, and also some Space Marines from time to time, because who hasn't at one point built Space Marines? Although I can say that when I started the hobby, I started with the Imperial Guard first. I'm one of the few that did not actually begin collecting Space Marines as their first thing into 40k. Although technically, if I really wanted to get technical about it, my first foray into the miniature wargame hobby was actually spaceships with a game called Battlefleet Gothic. That's what got me the bug. That's what really made me be like, this is something I want to do. Because it was the idea of playing a battle, and instead of having an individual figures and people, it was all about, this cruiser versus that cruiser, this frigate versus that frigate. And that really appeals to me. Now, partially from a historical mindset. My family history, I have a grandfather who was in the Navy during World War II and has told stories. And as a very young boy, I ate them up like they were nothing. Oh, they were not nothing, but the best thing ever. They weighed nothing. They were so delicious, and you wanted more. So I ate up both of my grandfather's stories. They both were in World War II. One was in the Navy, one was in the Army. I'll have more stories about that, the one from the Army later. But right now we're going to talk about the grandfather from the Navy. So he would tell me stories about how that worked, being in the Navy, what that was like. And I had several other of my family ancestors on both sides of the family tree that had been in naval service. And so if I had been born without a disability, that's exactly where I would have gone. Unfortunately, nature had a different plan. But I can still at least put my brain in a similar space and think about naval stuff. And that's kind of what really got me into the Space Navy, these Space Navy war games. Specifically, I'm interested in Space Navy because it is futuristic. It does not have to do with real-world conflicts. I have a little bit of a difficulty with wargaming out actual human conflicts that people I know have fought in. That's why I never got into. I was tempted time to time, but I never actually started playing a World War II war game. There's some great ones out there, but it's a little hard for me to enjoy gaming that. I love the fiction. I love the idea of let's look at something that never was. Historicals is a little bit easier when you get really far back because of, medieval combat. Like it's hard. It's a lot harder to have that kind of connection to it. But when I have personally spoken with somebody who was on the beaches of D-Day, I don't really want to sit there and roll dice and say, ha ha, I just gunned down that many people on D-Day. Like, that does not appeal. Digressing a lot. That's part of what More is all about, is my digressions. Hope you enjoy. So, wargaming is the topic of today's video. And more specifically, how someone with a visual impairment can get into wargaming and still have a good time while finding things that will work well with their visual disability. There are several methods that you can use. The one that I recommend the most is find something that has big, chunky miniatures. There are micro war games. There are 15 millimeter war games. They can work if you don't mind moving around the little blocks of things, but I do not recommend attempting to paint those miniatures yourself. Either resign yourself to a sea of gray or silver, or you can pay someone else to paint the miniatures for you. It gets a little pricey, but it is a method you can use. Just make sure that they know to make the colors bright and distinct so that you can see them on the table. And if you have if you have some color blindness, then you want to communicate that to the painter as well, because otherwise they may paint your red coats red, and then you're not really going to be able to see much of them. But if you say, well, hey, I can see, you know what colors you can see, but pick something that's bright. I don't care if it's like pink or periwinkle or fuchsia. It doesn't matter. It's your army. Some people really go in for the historical accuracy, or making like, I want the mud and the blood, and I want to get like all this dirt and grime everywhere. If you're a historical, diorama painter, and I know someone who is, and he's a great painter and diorama creator. He actually has his own YouTube channel where he talks about weathering techniques and everything. Guy's fantastic, best buds. We actually lived together for a year in college, and that's awesome. If that's what you want to do that. I'm not telling you not to. But if all you want to do is be able to see your stuff, pick something bright. My personal recommendation is pink or goldenrod or purple, because it's very rare that you will find those colors naturally on any kind of battlefield that most people create. So it's a lot easier to say, oh, that pink flag over there, or that pink starship over there is mine. Ha ha! And of course, you can also kind of give people a little hard time because, haha, you got beat by the pink fleet. Unless, of course, you're playing someone that doesn't care about that, just like you, in which case you're both having fun anyway, so who cares? Pick a color that you can see easily. Pick a color that's going to make sure that you don't take things too seriously. Remember, this is a game. You want to have fun. If you're playing a historical game and the side that won in history didn't win in your game, don't get upset. Seriously, come on, people, it's a game. If that's gonna be a problem for you, be like me. Don't play historicals. Play fantasy. Play science fiction, and then you don't have that mindset of gotta win, because that's what happened in the past. But for wargaming. So that's the first thing. Make sure that your forces are very distinct. If you can get big chunky things, that's great. Battletech is a game where everything focuses around big chunky mechs. Now, miniatures wise, it's great. But the next thing you want something where the rules can fit on either a piece of paper, a single sheet of paper for each of your units, or a very large note card, so that you can clearly copy things down or print it out from your printer at home in a size that you can see. A lot of war games, like War Machine does this. They'll have these unit cards, and these little cards, and you're supposed to put them in card sleeves like Magic the Gathering cards, and be able to mark things off with a dry erase marker or a wet erase marker, whatever you're doing. I don't recommend wet erase markers on anything, but do you. The idea being that you mark off when you take damage and stuff. Problem is, for us visually impaired people, that doesn't work, because in order to fit all the details onto the cards, they make the print so itty bitty tiny, and they're depending on these itty bitty tiny symbols to represent different things, and I have no idea what any of those symbols mean, and the print's so small, I have to pick up each individual card and keep staring at it really close, and then people wonder what the heck's wrong with me, and my turn takes forever. It's so long, and it's not because I don't know what I'm doing, it's because I can't read it. So, if you are going to play one of those games, photocopy out the cards of your units, put it on standard size pieces of paper, put them on the table as your unit cards, and if anyone gives you a hard time, you don't play that person. One, if they're going to give you a hard time. Like, and if they're just joking, they're like, oh my gosh, pieces of paper. You can joke back and say, oh, yeah, like these glasses aren't for show. Haha. I need it this size. And have fun with it. Be polite. Don't be like angry in their face or anything. But if they're really if they really start giving you a hard time about it, they're not going to be a fun opponent. And you won't enjoy the game. They won't enjoy the game. And you'll have wasted an hour or however long your game takes. So avoid toxic players that can't deal with the fact that their opponent might have a visual impairment. So we're about halfway through the video, but that's thing number 2. So get your unit cards blown up on full-size pieces of paper or whatever size. It makes it easier for you to read. If you have to hand draw it out, do it. Have the rule book with you so that if someone says, if someone gives an issue about you using like a non-official unit reference card, show them that you've got the stuff, that you own the rule book. You're not trying to like skate out of buying the rule book for the company or whatever that thing is that you need. You can just explain like, I need this so I can see it, so it's large enough, and then I make photocopies of my army list or my units, and I can use them more often. In fact, I recommend that you give it a try for your next game because it might be relaxing for you too, and they might appreciate that. They might not, but that's their problem, not yours. You're doing what you need to do, and don't be shy about it. Okay, so unit cards, large print. Models, make them very clear and easy to paint. Play games that you deal with big models if you can. If you want to play like a 40K kind of game, I would stick with Space Marines. If I was to do it again from the beginning, I might stick with Space Marines. Purely because there's fewer models on the table, and I can paint them bright goldenrod yellow, and it's a particular IP branch of the Space Marine Army chapter. Sorry, I'm good at 40K words. And that's fine. But there's other games out there. There's a lot of other games out there, and that's part of what this is also about. You don't have to play one of the big games. Now, playing one of the big games will guarantee that you'll find an opponent, but it also ups the chance that the opponents that you're going to find are going to be the weird ones. There's a lot of different stuff out there. Another one that's a great game that doesn't have a lot of the same stigma, if you might, as 40K or Age of Sigmar, as fantasy is now called, is The Gates of Antares by Warlord. That's another sci-fi game. It has a lot of cool. There's a faction that's all about like spider-like powered armor suits. They're big and chonky. They're going to be easy for you to spot on the table. You can go for them. Let's see. But again, my big thing and where my focus and my fascination is right now is on starship combat. Because starships are cool. Now, there's a couple different flavors that you can go with starship combat. I think, was it Whiz Kids? I can't remember. Anyway, there's a attack wing style game for Star Trek. I forget the official name, but if you just Star Trek attack wing, I'm pretty sure you'll find it. They have pre-painted miniatures, which takes the painting aspect of difficulty out of miniature wargaming, if that's what you want. It plays a bit more board gamey. There's a lot of little pieces and details and pre-measured firing lines and warp trails that you can use for that game. If you like bits and you can see them easily enough, that's great. And it's Star Trek themed, so if you're a Trekkie like I am, it'll be right up your alley. I personally don't play it because I like other things with my Starship games, but I see nothing against it. I think if you enjoy it, go for it. And if the money is not too crazy. There's one that's called X-Wing, and it is the same thing, but Star Wars. And they have a lot of cool miniatures for that that's more focused on fighter versus fighter action. So if you really just want to do like, X-Wings versus TIE fighters, that's right exactly where you want to be. There's also Star Wars Armada, and that is Star Wars again, but it's more fleet based. So that's when you can get like, your super Star Destroyers, your Victory class Star Destroyers, all the Star Destroyers. Just get all the Star Destroyers. I know that people say like, the Empire's bad, and they're right. I'm not arguing that point, but their ships look really, really cool, especially on the tabletop. If I was playing that game, I'd be playing an Imperial player all the way just to have Star Destroyers and more Star Destroyers on the table. They're also really easy to see from a distance. You always know that's a Star Destroyer. I don't care how far away you're standing. I can be standing 6 feet from the table, looking down at the table, and I know that's a Star Destroyer. Like, because it's a triangle. I like it. So pick something that's distinctive, no matter what game you're playing. Now, what I've done is I have 3 games that I'm kind of prepping miniatures for. The first one, I do have something that I'm prepping for Age of Sigmar, and because it's run by Games Workshop, you need to have official models. So I picked up a Daughters of Cain army and started playing. Now this is a good example of, well, first off, my, medium paint job. This is after 10 years of painting and learning how to do stuff. This is about as good as I get. But I'm fine with it. So I chose a bright and distinct paint style for this miniature, and each one of my miniatures for this army are a different color scheme. They don't all look like this one. There's some that have pink hair. There's some that there's one that's bright yellow all the way around. The snake body is bright yellow. I do all those things so that they're all unique, individual, and so I can clearly see them on the table because they are a riot of color. And that's how I'm going to be able to see them. And also, I gave it a white base. Now, I'm going to clean this up a little bit because there's a lot of spaces on the edges that could be cleaned up. But I think once I do clean it up, I will keep the white bases so that I can clearly see where all my units are on the table. It's even if because like that bow, past like 3 feet, that bow, I can't see that. I can see the hair. I can see the splotch of color that I know where the hair is. And I can see, with the red on the front of her scales, I can see that part. So I know she's facing the wrong direction, but I wouldn't be able to see any kind of details. So this is one example of a bright, distinct paint scheme that is non-standard. There's nothing gritty and muddy about her. I promised I wouldn't mention RPGs, but I'm going to mention RPGs. So I used to be a huge fan of Reaper miniatures. I still am a huge fan of Reaper miniatures. But in the past 2 years, I discovered another style of miniatures that actually works even better for me as a game master. Because one of the things that I've found when playing with groups of players around my table and setting up these big elaborate scenes, because I have nice 3-dimensional terrain, some that I've built myself, some that I've bought, mostly that I've bought. And your average Reaper mini will kind of get lost, especially if you use a lot of natural colors like I do. Like I used to use a lot of natural colors on everything, animated all greens and browns and things. And so all my brigands who were dressed to blend in with the woods would blend in with the woods on my terrain maps, and then I'd forget where they are and I can't move them around, and I'd lose track of things in the middle of a scene while I'm DMing, and I try to keep things flowing, so I try not to stop the game if I can't find something. I just keep moving on without it, and part of the story gets lost. So the solution that I found is the miniatures from a game called Super Dungeon Explorer, and it has miniatures in a style that's called I think it's called chibi or chibi. And what that really means is A, they're cute, and B, they have massive heads. Like seriously, look at this guy's melon. So this is a figure from, I believe it's from actually, I'm not sure if this is from Super Dungeon Explorer or from Arcadia, but I painted this guy up as a character that I played in an RPG. You notice I still use the greens and the browns, but because the head is so huge, it's a lot easier to see this figure from 3 or 4 feet away when I'm DMing a scene, and I know where he is, I know where the other ones are. I've got like some monsters that are painted, bright colors, and easy to spot from distances for role-playing stuff. And it works the same for like skirmish games. So I would actually recommend, if you can, get your hands on some chibi style miniatures for your war games. You're doing a skirmish game and you don't care what type of miniature you use. Reaper sells them. They have a small line of I forget what the line is called. I think anyway, just you type in chibi or CHIBI, and you'll find it. And they'll have a few that you can sell. I still support Reaper. I think they're fantastic. A good buddy of mine he works for Reaper, so props. And get those. There's also I think it's Cool Mini or Not is the one that does the Arcadia Legends, and I think it's Soda Pop Miniatures does Super Dungeon Explorer. I could be wrong. Super Dungeon Explorer is the name of the game. That's where I found those minis. I've got a large collection of them. I'm slowly painting them to look like monsters from RPGs and stuff like that, and because it's fun, and they're cute and they're easy to see. So that's what I do for that. Now for space games, for the naval combat games, I went a bit further afield. I got big miniatures. To give you an idea, this is how, like this thing's pretty big, next to my face. So the reason why I like this is there's several. One, this is a figure. This is actually sold as a model kit, and it's sold by a company called Bandai. And the ship that is represented here is from the television show Space Battleship Yamato, known in the United States as Star Blazers. And this is a model of a cruiser that's only seen really in the first episode of the first season of the show, and only in like the first couple of minutes of that episode, as it takes part in this massive battle. Now, I really like the futuristic battleship design of these figures. And you can see like they've got movable turrets. There's several movable turrets above and below, so and then one on the back here. And you've got the aft engines there, and of course there's the bow. And that is actually, like, there's some debate. Some people say that thing blip in the front is supposed to be some big giant cannon, but at that point in the show they hadn't introduced the big giant cannon yet. So I think really, and how I think they're used is they're an engine, because these ships are designed to be able to stop in space and then go backwards. So I think that's the bow engine. Anyway, these miniatures are big, and so therefore they're easy to see. And so what I do is I have a game that I'm slowly converting to work as a space combat game, and I recommend it. Gridded Naval Wargaming. You can buy it on Amazon. It's ridiculously affordable. It's designed for naval war games. It does a lot of ancient war games. So if you want to do like the galleys from ancient Greece or ancient Rome, that kind of combat, it'll do that. It'll do some of the Age of Sail, cannons and Napoleonics type stuff. A very, very simple rule set. You just need a bunch of D6s. Everything is played out on a hex grid. I use the rules that are for the pre-Dreadnought and Dreadnought eras, so just before World War I and then the World War I era. The reason why I use those is because that's when the big guns like you would see in this Space Battleship Yamato show. The big guns of the battleships won the day before aircraft became very prevalent. And that's the kind of game that I want to play when I play a space combat game. So I'm working on converting this up, and I'm making unit cards like I described earlier. I'm customizing some of the units to reflect the models that I have, because I have several different models from that range, and I might do a showcase at some point of just this game being played. But then you get a space mat that's marked out in hexagons. I recommend getting 1 to 2 inch sized hexagons, because that gives you a very large hexagon space in order to fit your larger than standard miniatures on it. And the benefit of having hexagons for your spaceship combat is they're a lot easier. It's a lot easier to measure things. You're not sitting there with a ruler trying to guess and trying to gauge distances when you can't see too well anyway. You just know this thing has a 6 hex range. So I'm going to count out 6 hexes, and hexes are usually easier to see from a distance. So hexagon battle map. Make them bigger than standard for yourself, or find a group that already plays with that, and learn these rules. These rules are insanely easy to learn. They're abstract enough that you don't get lost in the minutia of it. And I like tinkering with things, and I feel like I could tinker with these. It's kind of like with OSR games, old school Renaissance games for role-playing games. I feel like I could tinker with this and not break it, as long as I pay moderate amount of attention to it and create something that I enjoy, which is why I use it. Why I use this for space combat instead of for wet Navy combat, because it works. It's fine. It's not that crazy, and they handle conservation of momentum and stuff like that. Ships don't stop on a dime no matter what medium they're sailing through. So these are the things that I do for wargaming. One other thing, your dice. The standard dice that people get are not very good, especially someone's going to try to sell you on a brick of small, tiny Chessex dice. No offense to Chessex, they're a great company, they make great dice, but as a visually impaired person, I can't see them 9 times out of 10, especially at a distance. And I've had people get upset at me because I reach down and pick up dice off the table to read what they say. And it takes time, it takes energy, and if your opponent starts thinking that you're cheating, it can kind of ruin a game. So what I recommend is get yourself standard size dice, or even jumbo size dice if you can. These are a standard size deep red Chessex die with bright white pips. I don't have any color blindness, so this works for me. So this is my solution. It doesn't have to be yours, but get a high contrasting color with the pips. Don't look for the numbers, because numbers, they get tiny, they get lost. I have jumbo dice with numbers, and I still have to pick them up to read them. The pips I can see from a distance, so that's been my experience. And these are a lot easier to see on the table than the smaller dice. Or you get those made by Bicycle, made for anyone who plays dice games, sold next to playing cards. You can find them at like Target and most other places. Walmart usually has them. Bicycle dice, white die, black pips. I know it's terribly bland, but it works really well. Now, if you can find black dice with white pips, that works even better. High contrast is your friend. And I think that would be true for anyone, whether you have a visual impairment or not. Find the tools that make it more comfortable for you to play the game. Even if they're not as aesthetically pleasing to the eye, make them what works for you. because as long as you can use it, you will enjoy the game. If you try to get the perfect thing and then it's uncomfortable for you to use, then you won't play the game, which means you won't have fun and you've just wasted your own time. So get the tools that work for you, find the game that works for you, and enjoy yourself. Anyway, thank you for listening to my ramble. I hope you all have a wonderful day. If anything in this interests you and you'd like to hear me talk more about a particular game that I've had experience with, or if you want to see a kind of a let's play of this game with my version of the space combat stuff, leave me a comment down below. Give me a like. I'd appreciate it. Maybe subscribe a little bit too, so I get an idea that people are really enjoying what I'm making. And I hope you have a good day again. Peace be with you. Bye-bye.